Hi, my name is Jeff and welcome to my workshop. Today we're going to be remotoring this Athearn Blue Box SD9 for the Milwakee Road. We're going to be using a Kato motor with flywheels. These are readily available at your local hobby shop or most online dealers who carry Kato. This is not sponsored by anybody, and I'm going to be using a few different tools from a number of different manufacturers as we do this. This is an older blue box, but it's in fairly decent shape. We're going to start by disassembling it. I've removed the trucks and couplers and take the shell off. So we'll start with the shell. Usually you just pry the shell off above the fuel tank and it will slip right off. The key is getting a fingernail or a tool in there to separate it out a little bit. But once you do that, the shell will just lift right off. We'll set that aside because we will be using the shell when we're in part 2 when we detail it and install lights in the shell. Part 3 of this video, we're going to do the wiring and decoder installation. So we'll take the couplers off. Make sure we save the clips so that we can remount them later. With the couplers removed, we need to remove the head. The next step is to remove the headlight, and that's clipped into a bracket. Since we're going to replace those with LEDs, we're not going to need it. Because of the age of this, you can see there's a lot of rust on the metal parts. Took a little bit of prying with some tweezers and pliers to get it loose. But once I popped it out, it lifted off easily enough. Okay, the next step is we're going to take off this metal strip that brought wire from the trucks to the top of the motor on the Athearn drives. And then to remove the motor and the trucks, we're going to remove the clip above the worm gear. It usually takes a flathead screwdriver, just get it underneath the ender in the center and gently pry up. Be careful not to break the two prongs because those are what hold the truck to the frame. And watch out because these things can go flying if you're not careful. So once that is off, we just pull the worm gear and drive gear out and the truck drops out of the. A quick inspection of the truck showed that everything's in pretty good shape and it's actually fairly well lubricated, but we do have some rust, so a little sandpaper will clean off the rust from the metal contact surfaces, like the top piece here and this plate down here, which is where the other side of the pickup comes in and contacts with the frame. That's in pretty good shape. But the part that's exposed to the air, those are prone to rust. But we need it clean because we're going to be soldering wire on there eventually. Once that's done, we'll reinstall the truck just so we can make sure we keep the trucks oriented. But we're going to remove the drive shaft from here. And then we'll repeat the process on the other end for the rear truck. Once the rear truck has been done, then we can just pry the motor out. Those motor mounts get brittle over time, and this is an older one, so these kind of broke apart. To get them out, I just take a screwdriver and poke through from the bottom. And we need to get those motor mounts out because we're replacing them with the 3D printed mount for the Kato motor. If the tabs break out, just push them through and get rid of them. If you're reusing the Athearn motor, you can buy new mounts, and that's always a good idea. So with that done, we can get this motor mount. This is a 3D printed motor mount. They're available on eBay. I'll put a link to the buyer's store on there. in the description below. But as you can see, these come from a guy that for the blue box and ready to run. You want to make sure you've got the oriented correctly. The instructions are real clear as to which way is the front of the motor mount, and that should point to the front of the engine. And then just line up the screw holes in the bottom of the mount with the Athearn mounting holes. And then just use the included screws that come with the mount to screw this in place. By the way, the gentleman who does these, he offers two different Athearn mounts for Athearns, one for road switchers and F units that work. That's the one we're using. He also offers one for switchers like the SW9, SW1200 series switchers as well. So you can get the ones you need for the unit you're building. He also has some videos of his own on mounting these. Once all four screws are in place, then we can mount the motor. The pickups are on the side and on the front of the motor, and it just snaps into the mount. Now, his instructions actually have you put the mount on the motor before you screw it in. I find it's easier to actually screw the mount in and then pop the motor in place. The next step then is going to be the drivetrain. The Kato motors use a hex drive, and Athearn uses a universal, and their drive shaft on this unit was a round shaft with a key molded into one side of it to hold it in, to help it align. So I'm using two different parts from two different A-line kits. They're universal hex drive shaft and universal mounting kits for non-hex. The non-hex has the part I need to convert this to that. This is the part, it's got a female universal on one end and it's got 4 slots on the other, which will hold the 2 pins that come on the hex mount, which I've cut down to size, and I've installed the hex on the end of it. So you can see that it mounts in like that, with the hex going into the flywheel, the universal attaching to the truck. You can see how it looks put together. I already did the one truck. Let's do the other. First step again is going to be to drop the truck out of the motor. It just makes it a lot easier to get to that flywheel. So again, we remove the cover from the truck and take out the worm gear. One thing to make sure of on the worm gear is that you don't lose that bushing at the end. They're small and they like to slide away, especially if it's well lubricated like this is. Make sure it's spinning free; those spin freely on there. If not, get a little dab of oil in there and loosen them up. Okay, so once the universal piece is on, then we can take the hex end and insert it into the flywheel and just get it all the way in. It'll move up and down as the truck turns. It'll pull it out as needed. But if it start with it all the way in with the truck straight, then you don't have to worry about it coming out when the truck goes around a corner, especially if it has to deal with tight curves. Once that's in, we can see that it works. Now we put the truck back in, get the pickup tab over the drive shaft. Make sure the truck is seated properly, and then insert the end of the worm gear and universal shaft into the new shaft, drive shaft, and get the worm gear in place with the bushing seated squarely in their mounting pegs. And then just pop the cover back on. And this is going to be the conclusion of part 1. In part 2, I'm going to add some detailing to the shells and install LED lights and mount the decoder into the shell and wire the lights to the decoder. And in part 3, we'll wire the motor up to a 4-pin plug that the decoder will also be wired to the other end of, so that it can be easily separated for maintenance and work. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss and turn on notifications so you don't miss upcoming videos. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate all of you who have already subscribed. Have a good day.